Welcome, everyone, to the semi-annual Sustainability Contest and Keynote presentation. We are so lucky to have all of you here today, and I just thank you so much for being here. We have the good fortune to be visited by sort of a hero in sustainability in our local area. Dr. Tom Bierma, here at the front table, is going to give our keynote address. Tom's been teaching for over 30 years and researching in the realm of environmental health. He teaches at Illinois State University. He teaches and has taught courses in waste management, pollution prevention, air pollution control, environmental health law and management, toxicology, and epidemiology. He is involved in research focused on the interface between business and the environment. It says here, including a book on the use of supply contracts to improve business sustainability. I hope that you will take the opportunity to talk with Dr. Bierma after our event, when he'll be available for some mingling and questions and answers, and just take advantage of this local contact, especially if you have any interest in getting involved in any career that might have something to do with sustainability. And I think you'll find out that this is a really exciting realm and an inspiring one, and when you find yourself getting involved in it, you really feel like, gosh, maybe I can make a difference. And many of your careers could have some aspect to them within sustainability, so I hope you'll take advantage of kind of hanging out a little bit afterwards and talking with some of the people here, including the student presenters that we have for you to talk to today. We're also going to hear toward the end of the contest, and basically we'll do keynote first, and then we'll do student presentations. After that, we'll award the top performers, the top scorers, according to our esteemed judges at the next table back. We'll award them some prizes. And while we're trying to decide who among them really gets the top prize, you'll also hear about our student organization for the environment, SAFE. We also have a visitor from SAGE from Eureka College here with us today. So if you're interested in Eureka or ISU for transfer schools, those are, I'll make you aware of those people as well. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our keynote presentation, and immediately after that, we'll hear from our students.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay? Yeah. All right. Very good. I think, like with all of our speakers today, there's a lot we could talk about, not a lot of time. I'll try to keep it brief. I'll talk just a little bit about food waste recovery and what we learned in Bloomington Normal and then really nationwide looking at that issue about ways to improve that. But I'll finish with just a few slides about some students. Just picked 3 students who went through ICC, then came to Illinois State University to major in environmental health, and then what they've gone on to do. So that'll be my finishing up.
And I forgot to load the most important presentation slide, so I'm doing that quickly. And then we will shut that off.
No problem. So I can go ahead and get started just to communicate some of the basic information before the slides come up. Food waste is an enormous topic, and current estimates are somewhere between 20% and 40% of all the food in the United States that's grown, processed, transported, and consumed. Somewhere 20 to 40% of that becomes waste. And we can kind of break that wasted food into 3 categories. We have wholesome food that's still fit for human consumption, but it doesn't. It's not getting eaten. It's getting wasted. So maybe we can. I'll just.
Yeah. Do you want the next?
Yeah. So you can see there in the 20 to 40%. Something I just want to mention in this we sort of think of food waste as being something that happens in our own home, and a lot of it does. You can see residential is about 44%, but most of the food waste comes from industrial, commercial, institutional sources. So it's a much bigger issue than just in our homes. This is the food recovery hierarchy. Environmentally, economically, what's the worst thing we can do with that food waste? What's the best? And what you can see at the bottom, the worst thing to do with the food waste is to landfill it or incinerate it. The next best would be composting. At least we're able to recover the nutrients in that food. Up from that would be industrial uses, such as turning that food into fuel. And there's a variety of ways we can do that. So we're able to harvest the energy out of it and sometimes the nutrients. Better than that would be feeding animals, because at least we can displace the food that's grown for those animals. And then near the top, feeding hungry people. So people who are food insecure, they lack wholesome food. If we can divert some of that food waste to feed them, that's one of the best things we could do with it. The very best, environmentally, economically, would be to reduce that waste to begin with, to change our food handling practices so that we don't have that waste to begin with. I'm going to focus on feeding hungry people. That's really where I'm going to talk. So types of food waste. We mentioned wholesome means still fit for human consumption. Spoiled, it was wholesome, but it's been around too long. So it's either not safe to eat anymore or not palatable. And then at the bottom, sort of unavoidable food waste. That is, some food products contain parts that we just can't eat, like rinds or peels, seeds, those kinds of things. So can we make a big impact on hunger by diverting food waste? Some estimates are that if we could recover from retail establishments all the wholesome food waste and at least some of the spoiled food waste, keep it from spoiling, we could end hunger locally. Now, I don't know if that's realistic. Could we end hunger? But could we make a significant impact? Absolutely. I am convinced of that. So given that, given the social benefits of this, and the environmental and the economic, why isn't it happening? And it is happening to some extent, but we have a long way to go, a lot of potential opportunity. And federal law is helping in this regard. Federal law protects companies from legal liability when they donate their waste food. That's really valuable. And there's a significant tax benefit. So federal law provides enhanced tax breaks for donated food. So economically, they're making it more attractive for companies to donate the food rather than send it to the landfill. But there's significant barriers. And to really understand these barriers, we have to look more closely. And let me start with, I don't know if you are close enough to it's really small. There's another screen back there if that's a little easier to see. The commercial food system starts with the grower, the farmer. Then it goes to the processor that might just wash it or might really process it, make soup out of it or something. Then distribution, and finally retail. Retail is where we, the consumer, interfaces with that food. So grocery stores, restaurants, or institutional food sources such as ICC, some of the food services here. And there's food waste at every step in that chain. So where does that food waste go? In some communities, there's a food bank. In fact, most communities have a food bank. There's typically one or two per community. In the Peoria area, there's two. Feeding America, which is a nationwide network of food banks. And then Midwest Food Bank is an independent food bank. They're located in Normal, Illinois, but they operate here in the Peoria area as well. And these food banks receive a lot of food waste from those sources in the food distribution channel. They get that food, and they then distribute it to food assistance agencies. And that's really who interfaces with the food insecure, with the hungry. The food banks themselves don't distribute food directly to the food insecure. It goes to these local agencies. So this would be food pantries, for example, shelters, soup kitchens. They would receive their food from the food banks. Now, the food banks do a great job. These are pretty big organizations. They do a great job getting food from other big organizations. So big processors, big distributors, for example, Walmart. When we think of Walmart as the retail operation, but really there's a huge distribution operation. And that's where most of the food gets to the food bank. They may have a truck full of food that they have to get rid of, not take it to the store. They'll take it to the food bank. So the food banks are great dealing with large companies. You get to something like retail, where these are small operations. There might be 100 or more in a community. The food bank's not as efficient as working with so many small groups. So we really don't get a lot of the food waste collected from these retail operations. The food assistance agencies, again, we have lots of those, maybe 100 in a community. They look at that food waste at the retail level and they say, oh boy, we could be getting more of that food. So they try to get some of this food waste out of the retail organizations. Problem is there's a lot of little retailers and a lot of little food agencies. So you can kind of imagine the chaos that can happen when they try to get that food. So there's great potential here from retail to these small assistance organizations, but there's constraints. Large number of small organizations, lack of resources. So, this is just an example. This is an advertisement for a typical food pantry for what their hours are. 2 hours out of a whole week. That's very common. Many of these pantries have no paid staff. They rely entirely on volunteers, maybe associated with a church. So that's how small these organizations are. Now you think, how are they going to coordinate picking up food? So one barrier, we'll just throw out some example barriers here because I think it makes some points. There's many more than this. But one barrier is we've got a chaotic, inefficient, unreliable pickup at the retail level. So these retailers have food waste, but trying to get it to the food insecure, it's a very chaotic and inefficient system. A second barrier, kind of related to that, is food safety at the time of pickup. So again, some of these food pantries will go pick up food, but this is a typical situation. You see a pickup truck loaded with food. They've gone from retailer to retailer. What have you got? Okay, I'll put it in the back of my truck. What do you see here with potential problems? We've got no protection from contamination. We've got no refrigeration if it's food that requires refrigeration to remain safe. So there's a real food safety issue at the time of pickup, and that's going to discourage retailers from donating. Because even though they're protected from legal liability, they don't want to make people sick, and they don't want the damage to their name, to their brand, if somebody gets sick from their food. Another example, I know you probably can't see it, this is full of meat sitting in an open vehicle. No refrigeration, no protection from insects or other things that might get into that. And these volunteers, wonderful people, very proud of what they're doing, but they just don't have the resources, don't have the training to do it safely. Another example, people picking up food from the retailer, but again, where's that car going to go after this stop? How long until it gets to a place where the food's going to get used with no refrigeration? Well, one solution to that, we can look to Iowa City, Iowa. They have an organization called Table to Table. And what they have is a set of these vans, And they are the only organization that picks up from retail establishments. So if you're a retailer in Iowa City, you have surplus food, you want to donate it, you call one place, that's Table to Table. They'll come get it. They use volunteers, but they're trained volunteers in how to handle food safely. They use volunteers, and they don't take it back to their building and unpack it and wait for someone to need it. They take it directly to the food pantries. I spent a day volunteering with Table to Table to really study how they do this. It's really amazing at how efficiently they're able to move that food. And again, it's hard for you to see, but basically this small logistics, this van, is the intermediary between the retail and the agencies. All the agencies know if they're going to get food, it's going to come through Table to Table. And it really has made a difference in terms of the willingness of retailers to donate their food. Another organization that's kind of similar, Food Finders, they operate in the Los Angeles area. What's different about them, they don't have their own vehicles. They rely on volunteers to use their own vehicles. But again, they train the volunteers, they equip them with insulated cooler bags to keep things cool. And they are able to distribute the food that they pick up within 5 miles of where it's picked up. So you can imagine the LA area, you don't want to be driving very far. That's going to delay the delivery of that food. They've got it figured out how they can get a volunteer, pick up the food, and get it to a food pantry all within 5 miles. It's a really amazing operation. They're also the least expensive of all the organizations we studied. I estimated that their costs are about 5.5 cents per pound of donated food, which is really good. I think Table to Table was about 13, 14 cents a pound. Some of the food banks are 60, 70, 80 cents a pound to operate. So there's this huge disparity, and they've really got it down as a very inexpensive, very efficient system, relying almost entirely on volunteers. A third barrier, again, kind of related to food safety, is meat display. So these pantries receive meat that's donated, really valuable. I mean, the food insecure individuals, to be able to get meat, that's an important boost in the diet. But they don't have a way to display the food when the pantry's open and keep it refrigerated. So they get it out of the refrigerator and just lay it out for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, however long the pantry's open. And afterwards, what happened? I mean, it's been sitting out. Maybe it gets back in the refrigerator. Maybe it gets thrown away. So this is a significant food safety problem with some pantries. One solution to, oh, that's just another picture of display. Waste Not OC, that stands for Waste Not Orange County. And this is a organization, it's a county just south of Los Angeles. This is an organization actually started by the health department because of food safety concerns with the donated food. But they brought in the food banks, they brought in the pantries, but importantly, what they also brought in were these major commercial food distributors like US Foods and Cisco. And they sit on this organization with the pantries and with the food banks. And these are companies, these food distributors, they get into the retailers' establishments almost every day, certainly every week. And they know when a retailer is getting rid of one of their coolers, one of their display coolers, either because they want to upgrade to something more modern, more efficient, better lighting, maybe they're going to LED lighting. And the distributors say, oh, you're getting rid of that display? If you just throw it on our truck, you can claim the tax donation, and we'll just deliver it to a pantry that we know needs a display. So within Orange County, the pantries are all getting these coolers so that they can display the meat and keep it at temperature. So a very simple solution that came about just because of the way the county organized this committee, who they got talking to whom. So a really nice way of solving a problem. And allowing people to get wholesome food. So those are just 3 examples. I don't want to go on any longer. Let me just wrap it up in terms of moving forward and then talk about some of these students. So moving forward, if we wanted to do this in our own communities, just 3 ways, three suggestions in terms of getting started. Understand these and other food recovery barriers in your own community. So you have to get to know, how does the network operate in our community? Where are the barriers? Be sure to include the existing stakeholders. So there's already people, there's going to be local champions for food recovery, there's going to be major retailers. Understand who they are, what are they currently doing, and make sure they're involved in kind of brainstorming possible solutions. And then explore ways to organize people and to fund some of these operations. Some rely on donations in order to be funded, but I think there are ways of taking advantage of the tax breaks that the retailers get. So they would get more tax breaks if they're able to donate more and send less to the landfill. And maybe there's ways of getting them to share some of that tax break with the organizations that actually do the logistics, do the capture of that food waste. So when we have some question and answer coming up, and I'm interested in your ideas or anything else you want to talk about. But let me just briefly touch on a few students. So this is careers in environmental health, careers in sustainability. Just looking at 3 former ICC students that came to ISU to major in environmental health. Starting with a current student, Kelsey, she was thrilled that I was going to be talking at this event because she was in the audience 2 years ago, sitting here listening to the presentations. She came to ISU majoring in environmental health. Last summer, she did her internship with Marathon Petroleum. She moved to Ohio for the internship, but actually spent a lot of her time in Texas. So she did a lot of traveling with Marathon, helping refineries reduce air, water, and waste discharges. So she really loved it, and she's thinking maybe to go back to work for Marathon after she graduates this coming spring. And then a couple of students who graduated several years ago. I lost track of how many ICC students we've had. It's dozens and dozens and dozens. So I had to just pick a couple because Tony and Javier were friends here at ICC. And they thought, oh, yeah, we're both kind of interested in this environmental thing, sustainability. Let's go together to ISU. And they kind of stuck together the whole time that they were there. So Javier, after he graduated, he's had a couple of jobs. And now he's with E2 Comply in Dallas. And it's a consulting firm. He helps businesses reduce their air emissions from off-road vehicles. So these would be like big tractors, earth-moving equipment, those sorts of things that aren't intended for on-road transportation. They have their own standards. And he helps companies to understand what they need to do to comply with the air pollution standards and minimize the emissions from those vehicles. Tony, when he graduated, he went first into the Peace Corps. There's a lot of demand from the Peace Corps for environmental health majors. And he did his time with the Peace Corps in Cambodia. Really, really enjoyed it. And as part of that, there's a master's degree you can get after your Peace Corps or before your Peace Corps experience at different universities. He went to Johns Hopkins University for his master's degree associated with his Peace Corps service. And now he's with Higgins and Associates in Denver. So he does indoor air quality surveys, environmental site assessments. So that's if a business is selling property, you have to assure that it's not contaminated, and hazardous materials surveys. So again, interesting work that Tony's doing. So this is just a picture. they stayed friends all through college, and our student club often does homecoming floats, and this was when they were in the parade, just getting ready, I think, for the parade to start. And this is my last slide. Mandy didn't go to ICC, but she is local. And I just wanted to mention, she came and spoke at ICC just a couple weeks ago. So she's Divisional Environmental Health and Safety Manager for Caterpillar. And her primary focus is sustainability for Caterpillar. So again, just an interesting career option. So that's it. I'll stop there. Thank you.